Tommy had always been that guy. You know the type. The one who couldn't resist a good laugh, even if it meant bending the rules a little. At 22 years old, he was studying at one of the most prestigious music schools in New York. And honestly, he was coasting. Sure, he had talent. Everyone said so. His professors would shake their heads and mutter things like, wasted potential, and if only he applied himself. But Tommy had other priorities. His YouTube channel had just hit 50,000 subscribers. Not bad for a college student making prank videos and musical comedy sketches. His latest video, where he pretended to be a terrible street performer and then suddenly broke into an incredible performance, had gotten over 2 million views. The comments were always the same. Dude, you're hilarious. The look on their faces. More pranks, please. It felt good. Really good. Better than sitting in a practice room for 6 hours a day like some of his classmates did. His roommate, Dev, was the complete opposite. Serious, focused, always practicing. They'd known each other since freshman year, and somehow the friendship worked. Dev would be running scales at 7 in the morning while Tommy was still asleep, dreaming up his next video idea. And Dev was always the voice of reason, the one who tried to talk Tommy out of his wilder schemes. That Tuesday afternoon, Tommy burst into their shared apartment with his phone in hand, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Dev was at his keyboard, headphones on, working through some complicated piece. Tommy yanked one headphone off his friend's ear. Dude, you're not going to believe this, Tommy said, practically bouncing. Elena Volkov is coming here, to our school. Next week. Dev looked up, genuinely impressed. Wait, seriously? The Elena Volkov? The one and only. For those who didn't know classical music, Elena Volkov was a big deal. Like, really big. She'd been performing at concert halls around the world since she was 16. Now in her 50s, she was considered one of the greatest living pianists. She'd played for presidents, won every award worth winning, and had a reputation for being absolutely uncompromising when it came to music. She didn't suffer fools. She didn't do small talk. She just played, and when she played, grown adults cried. She's doing a masterclass, Tommy continued, open to all students. And get this, there's a Q&A session where students can actually play for her and get feedback. Dev's eyes lit up. That's incredible. I'm definitely going. You should too. Might actually learn something. Tommy was already thinking 3 steps ahead. His mind was racing with possibilities. Elena Volkov. Serious, intense, perfectionist Elena Volkov. The woman who once walked out of a concert because the piano wasn't tuned to her exact specifications. The pianist who had made a famous conductor cry during a rehearsal because he couldn't keep time properly. She was perfect. I'm going to prank her, Tommy said. Dev's expression changed immediately. No, absolutely not. Are you insane? Hear me out, Tommy. This is Elena Volkov we're talking about. She's not some random person on the street. She's a legend. You can't just... I'm going to pretend I'm a terrible player, Tommy interrupted, excited now. I'll volunteer to play during the Q&A. I'll mess up on purpose, like really badly. Wrong notes, terrible rhythm, everything. I'll record her reaction. Can you imagine? Her face when she hears someone butchering a simple piece? It'll be perfect for the channel. Dev stood up, shaking his head. This is a terrible idea. Like monumentally bad. You know what could happen? She could complain to the dean. You could get kicked out, or worse. She could just embarrass you in front of everyone. She's known for being brutal with students who waste her time. That's what makes it funny, Tommy insisted. It's not funny. It's disrespectful. Tommy rolled his eyes. Come on, man. It's just a joke. People need to lighten up. Besides, my subscribers will love it. This could push me to 100,000 easy. They argued about it for another 20 minutes. Dev brought up every possible reason why this was a bad idea. Tommy could damage his reputation at school. He could burn bridges with important people in the music world. He could hurt his own future career. But Tommy had an answer for everything. It was just harmless fun. Nobody would get hurt. It would be hilarious. Finally, Dev sighed in defeat. You're going to do this no matter what I say, aren't you? Probably, yeah. Just promise me one thing. If this backfires, and it will, don't say I didn't warn you. Over the next few days, Tommy prepared for his prank like he was planning a heist. He researched Elena Volkov, watching her interviews, studying her performances. She rarely smiled. She spoke carefully, choosing her words with precision. In one interview, she talked about how modern students lack discipline, how they wanted shortcuts instead of putting in the hard work. Perfect, Tommy thought. She was exactly the kind of person who would have a strong reaction to a seemingly incompetent student. He practiced playing badly. It was harder than it sounds. When you've trained for years to play correctly, deliberately playing wrong requires its own kind of skill. He had to remember to use bad fingering, to hit notes slightly off, to mess up the timing in a way that sounded like genuine inability rather than intentional sabotage. He recorded himself several times, making sure it looked believable. He also planned his camera setup. He couldn't be obvious about recording, so he'd need to be subtle. He bought a small camera that looked like a pen and tested it multiple times. The quality wasn't great, but it would capture what he needed. His friend Lisa, who worked in the school's tech department, agreed to position herself in the audience with her phone ready as a backup angle. The night before the master class, Tommy could barely sleep. He kept imagining how it would go. He'd raise his hand during the Q&A. He'd walk up to the piano acting nervous. Maybe he'd even make his hands shake a little for effect. Then he'd start playing and it would be awful. Elena Volkov's face would change from polite interest to confusion to irritation. The other students would probably laugh. It would be uncomfortable and awkward and absolutely perfect for his channel. Dev tried one more time the next morning. It's not too late to back out. Not a chance, Tommy said, checking his camera pen. This is going to be legendary. What Tommy didn't know, couldn't possibly know, was that Elena Volkov had seen thousands of students in her 40-year career. She'd encountered every type of player imaginable. The naturally gifted, the hard workers, the pretenders, the ones who hid their talent behind jokes because they were afraid of failing if they actually tried. She'd seen them all. And she could spot someone pretending to be bad just as easily as she could spot someone pretending to be good. Tommy grabbed his backpack and headed out the door, completely confident in his plan. He had no idea that in a few hours everything he thought he knew about himself, about music, and about what really mattered was about to change. The prank he'd planned so carefully was about to become something else entirely, something he'd never forget. The recital hall was packed. Tommy had never seen it this full, not even during final performances. Every seat was taken and people were standing along the walls. Students, professors, even some people from outside the school who'd somehow heard about the master class. Everyone wanted to see Elena Volkov in person. Tommy slipped into a seat near the middle, close enough to see everything but not so close that he'd seem too eager. He adjusted his shirt pocket where the camera pen was hidden, making sure the lens had a clear view. Lisa caught his eye from across the room and gave him a subtle nod. She was ready with her phone. Everything was going according to plan. The lights dimmed slightly and the room fell silent. Then she walked out. Elena Volkov was smaller than Tommy expected. She wore all black, simple and elegant. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun. She didn't smile or wave. She just walked to the piano with purpose, sat down and placed her hands on the keys. No introduction needed. Everyone knew who she was, and then she started playing. Tommy had heard her recordings before, obviously. But hearing her live was something completely different. The first piece was Rachmaninoff, one of the complicated ones. Her fingers moved so fast they were almost a blur, but every single note was crystal clear. The music filled the entire hall, not just with sound, but with emotion. It was like the piano was singing, telling a story that made your chest tight. For a moment, Tommy forgot about his prank. He forgot about his YouTube channel, his subscribers, everything. He just listened. Around him, other students were leaning forward, completely absorbed. Some had their eyes closed. One girl in the front row had tears streaming down her face. The piece ended, and the silence lasted for a few heartbeats before everyone erupted in applause. Elena stood, gave a slight bow, and sat back down. She played 2 more pieces. Chopin, then something modern that Tommy didn't recognize. Each one was perfect. Not just technically perfect, but perfect in a way that made you feel things you couldn't quite name. After the performance, she finally spoke. Her accent was thick, but her English was clear. "Thank you. Now we will have discussion. I want to hear from you. Questions about technique, about interpretation, about the music. And if any of you wish to play, I will listen and offer guidance." Hands shot up immediately. She pointed to a nervous-looking guy in the front. He asked something about pedal technique and Debussy. Elena's answer was detailed, almost like a mini-lecture. She didn't just explain, she demonstrated, playing passages to show exactly what she meant. She was tough but not mean, direct but not cruel. More questions came. A girl asked about performance anxiety. A professor asked about her interpretation of a specific Beethoven sonata. Elena answered each one thoughtfully. Tommy waited, watching for the right moment. His heart was starting to beat faster. This was it, his big moment. About 30 minutes in, Elena asked again if anyone wanted to play for her. A few brave students went up. The first one, a pianist who Tommy knew was really good, played a Chopin etude. It sounded great to Tommy's ears, but Elena stopped him halfway through. She showed him a better way to phrase a particular section. The student tried again. Better, she said, but still missing something. She played it herself, and suddenly the difference was obvious. The second student got similar treatment. Technically fine, Elena said, but where was the feeling? Where was the story? You're playing notes, she told him, not music. The guy looked like he wanted to disappear. Tommy saw his opening. He raised his hand high. Elena's eyes scanned the room and landed on him. Yes, you come. This was it. Tommy stood up, trying to look both eager and nervous. He'd practiced this walk, this exact energy. Enthusiastic but uncertain. He made his way to the front, very aware that everyone was watching. He could feel his camera pen recording everything. Lisa had her phone up, pretending to just be documenting the masterclass like several other students. What is your name? Elena asked. Tommy. I'm a second-year student here. And what will you play for us, Tommy? Well, I've been really struggling with this one piece, he said, letting his voice shake just a little. I've been working on it for weeks, but I can't seem to get it right. I was hoping maybe you could help me figure out what I'm doing wrong. Elena nodded. Of course. Show me. Tommy sat down at the grand piano. It was a beautiful instrument, probably worth more than his entire education. He positioned his hands over the keys, took a deep breath, and began to play. It was gloriously, intentionally terrible. He'd chosen a simple Mozart piece, something that most first-year students could play decently, but Tommy butchered it. He hit wrong notes, not just slightly off, but completely wrong. His rhythm was all over the place, speeding up and slowing down randomly. His fingering was bizarre, using his pinky where he should use his thumb, crossing his hands in ways that made no sense. He even threw in a few hesitations like he was forgetting what came next. He could hear it. The ripple of reactions through the audience. A few giggles that people tried to suppress. Whispers. The girl next to Dev covered her mouth. Dev himself had his head in his hands. Tommy kept going, really committing to the bit. He added a wrong chord that made several people wince. He could see Elena in his peripheral vision, standing next to the piano. Her expression had changed from polite attention to something else. Confusion, maybe? He hit another spectacularly wrong note and saw a few more people in the audience exchange glances. This was perfect. Exactly what he wanted. He could already imagine the video editing, the build-up, the terrible playing, Elena's reaction. The comment section would go crazy. He played another measure, even worse than before, practically murdering the poor Mozart piece. But then something happened that wasn't in his script. Elena moved. She didn't stop him or step away. Instead, she walked around the piano bench. Tommy's fingers faltered for just a second, breaking character. What was she doing? She was supposed to look irritated, maybe make a cutting comment, possibly walk away in disgust. That was the plan. Instead, she sat down, right next to him on the piano bench. May I? She asked, her voice softer than it had been all evening. Tommy's mind went blank. This wasn't supposed to happen. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Elena didn't wait for an answer. She placed her hands on the keys in the higher register where Tommy wasn't playing. Don't stop, she said, and there was something in her eyes. Not anger, not irritation, something else. Something that looked almost like amusement, but deeper, like she knew something he didn't. Tommy's hands were still on the keys. The entire audience was silent now, not a whisper, not a sound. Everyone was leaning forward, sensing that something unexpected was happening. Even the students who'd been giggling had gone quiet. Elena began to play. Her right hand started weaving a melody around his awful playing. She was improvising, creating something beautiful on top of his deliberately terrible performance. The notes she played were perfect, flowing, turning his chaos into something that almost made sense. It was like she was having a conversation with his wrong notes, answering them with right ones. Tommy froze completely. His hands stopped moving. This wasn't the plan. This wasn't what was supposed to happen at all. The prank was falling apart, but something else was building in its place. Something he didn't understand yet. Elena glanced at him, and that's when he saw it clearly. The slight smile on her face, she knew. Somehow she knew exactly what he was doing. And instead of calling him out, instead of embarrassing him or getting angry, she was doing this. "I said don't stop," she repeated. Still playing, still creating beauty out of his mess, and Tommy, for the first time in his life, had absolutely no idea what to do next. Tommy's brain was screaming at him to do something, anything. But his hands just hovered over the keys, completely frozen. Elena kept playing beside him, her fingers dancing across the higher notes, creating this beautiful melody that somehow made his terrible playing seem like it had been intentional. Like they were working together instead of him making a fool of himself. The audience was transfixed. Nobody was laughing anymore. Nobody was whispering. They were all just watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Tommy could feel hundreds of eyes on him, and for the first time since he'd started making prank videos, he felt genuinely exposed. Vulnerable in a way that wasn't funny at all. Elena's music continued, patient and steady. She wasn't looking at the keys anymore. She was looking at him, and her expression had changed. It wasn't amused exactly. It was more like she was issuing a challenge. Her eyes seemed to say, "I know what you're doing. Now what are you going to do about it?" Something clicked in Tommy's chest. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was competitiveness. Maybe it was something deeper that he'd been pushing down for years. But suddenly his hands moved, not with wrong notes this time. Real ones. His left hand found a bass line, something that fit with what Elena was playing. It was tentative at first, careful, like he was testing the water, but it worked. The notes complemented hers, created a foundation for her melody to dance on top of. He heard it, really heard it, and something inside him shifted. Elena's smile widened just slightly. She changed what she was playing, taking the melody in a new direction, challenging him to follow. And he did. His right hand joined in, adding chords, then a counter melody. They weren't playing the Mozart piece anymore. They weren't playing anything that had ever been written down. They were just playing, creating something new right there in the moment. Tommy forgot about the camera in his pocket. He forgot about his YouTube channel. He forgot about the prank entirely. All he could think about was the music, about keeping up with this incredible pianist who was pushing him to be better with every phrase she played. She'd throw something complicated at him, and he'd answer with something unexpected. She'd slow down and he'd match her. She'd build intensity and he'd build it right alongside her. His fingers were moving faster now, more confident. He reached for techniques he hadn't used in months, things his professors had taught him that he'd dismissed as too serious, too classical, not fun enough for his videos. But now they came pouring out of him, and it felt incredible. It felt right in a way that nothing had felt in a long time. Elena shifted the mood again, going softer, more delicate. Tommy followed, his touch on the keys becoming gentler. They were having a conversation without words, back and forth, question and answer. She'd play a phrase that sounded like a question, and he'd answer it. He'd introduce an idea, and she'd expand on it, make it better, show him possibilities he hadn't seen. The audience had disappeared from Tommy's awareness. The recital hall had disappeared. It was just him and Elena and the piano and this music they were creating together. His heart was pounding, but not from nervousness, from excitement, from the pure joy of playing with someone who was making him reach higher than he'd ever reached before. Elena built the energy again, her hands moving in intricate patterns. Tommy matched her intensity, his fingers flying across the keys. They were playing fast now, really fast, but every note was clear. Every note mattered. He could feel sweat on his forehead. His arms were starting to ache, but he didn't want it to stop. He never wanted it to stop. They hit a peak together, both of them playing fortissimo, the sound filling the entire hall with this massive, beautiful noise. And then Elena did something unexpected. She pulled back suddenly, leaving Tommy playing alone for a few measures. It was a test, he realized. Could he carry it on his own? He could. He played a bridge, something that would bring them back together, something that invited her to rejoin. And she did, coming in softly at first, then building with him. They were partners now, truly playing as one. Her classical training and his more modern jazz-influenced style were blending together into something neither of them could have created alone. Tommy found himself smiling. Actually smiling. Not the fake smile he used in his videos, but a real one born from genuine happiness. This was why he'd started playing piano in the first place, back when he was 7 years old and his mom had scraped together money for lessons, not for views or subscribers or pranks. For this feeling, this connection, this magic. Elena began to wind it down, slowing the tempo, simplifying the melody. Tommy followed her lead, sensing that they were approaching the end. She played softer and softer, and he did the same, both of them diminishing until they were barely touching the keys. The last few notes were so quiet you had to hold your breath to hear them. They played the final chord together, Tommy's left hand, Elena's right hand, perfectly in sync. The sound hung in the air for a moment, then faded into silence. Neither of them moved. Tommy's hands were still on the keys, trembling slightly. He was breathing hard like he'd just run a marathon. Elena sat perfectly still beside him, her hands finally resting in her lap. The silence stretched out and Tommy became aware again of where he was, of the audience that he'd completely forgotten about. Then someone started clapping. It wasn't polite applause. It was thunderous. The entire hall erupted, people jumping to their feet, clapping and cheering and shouting. Tommy turned to look at the audience and saw Dev standing with tears streaming down his face, clapping so hard his hands had to hurt. Lisa had her phone up, but she was crying too. Even some of the professors were wiping their eyes. Tommy turned back to Elena. She was looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. There was approval there, definitely. But also something else, something knowing and a little bit sad. "You play beautifully," she said quietly, her voice barely audible over the continuing applause. "When you stop pretending to be someone you're not." The words hit Tommy like a physical blow. His face went hot. She'd known. From the very beginning, she'd known exactly what he was doing. The terrible playing, the prank, all of it. She'd seen right through him. And instead of calling him out, instead of embarrassing him in front of everyone, she'd done this. She'd shown him what he was capable of when he actually tried. "You have a gift," Elena continued, still speaking softly. "A real gift. But gifts mean nothing if you're too afraid to use them properly." "I wasn't afraid," Tommy said automatically, defensively. But even as the words left his mouth, he knew they were a lie. Elena knew it too. He could see it in her eyes. "Everyone is afraid," she said. "The question is what you do with that fear. Do you hide behind jokes? Or do you face it and see what you're truly capable of?" The applause was starting to die down. People were taking their seats again, buzzing with excitement about what they'd just witnessed. Elena stood up from the bench, smoothing her black dress. Tommy stood too, feeling shaky on his legs. Elena turned to address the audience. "This young man has extraordinary talent," she announced, her voice carrying through the hall. "He simply needs to decide if he wants to waste it on jokes or use it to move people." Tommy felt like everyone in the room was staring into his soul. The camera pen in his pocket suddenly felt heavy, like evidence of a crime. His carefully planned prank had turned into something else entirely, and he had no idea how to process it. Elena looked at him one more time, and this time she did smile. A real smile, warm and genuine. "Think about it," she said. Then she gestured toward the seats. "Thank you, Tommy, you may sit down." He walked back to his seat in a daze. The rest of the masterclass continued, but Tommy didn't hear any of it. He just sat there staring at his hands, feeling like something fundamental had shifted inside him, and knowing he'd never be quite the same again. The masterclass ended about an hour later, but Tommy barely registered any of it. He sat in his seat like a statue, his mind replaying those few minutes at the piano over and over. The way Elena's music had pulled the real playing out of him. The way it felt to stop pretending and just let himself be good at something. The way her words had cut right through all his defenses and exposed a truth he'd been running from. When everyone started filing out, Tommy didn't move. Students passed by him, some reaching out to pat his shoulder or whisper, "That was amazing," as they went. He nodded absently, but didn't really see them. Dev appeared in front of him, his eyes still red from crying. "Dude," Dev said, sitting down in the empty seat next to him. "That was insane. I've never heard you play like that. I didn't even know you could play like that." Tommy finally looked up. "I didn't either. What are you going to do?" "About what?" "About everything. About the video. About what just happened up there." Tommy had forgotten about the video. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the camera pen, staring at it. Hours of planning, the perfect setup, and now he had footage of something completely different from what he'd intended. Not a prank gone right, but a prank that had transformed into something real and vulnerable and honest. I don't know, Tommy said quietly. Dev squeezed his shoulder and stood up. I'll see you back at the apartment. Take your time, man. After Dev left, Tommy continued sitting there as the recital hall emptied out. Maintenance staff came in and started cleaning up, moving chairs around. Still, he sat. He felt like if he left this room, he'd have to make decisions, and he wasn't ready for that yet. Are you going to sit here all night? Tommy jumped. Elena Volkov was standing at the end of his row, a small leather bag over her shoulder. Most of the lights had been turned off, and in the dim glow she looked smaller, more human, less like the legend she was. I'm sorry, Tommy blurted out. I'm really sorry. The prank was stupid and disrespectful, and I shouldn't have wasted your time like that. Elena walked down the row and sat 2 seats away from him, not too close but not distant either. Why did you do it? Tommy had prepared a dozen clever answers for this question if anyone ever asked. But sitting there with her after what had just happened, he couldn't manage any of them. I don't know. Because it seemed funny? Because I wanted content for my channel? Because that's what I do? That's what you do, Elena repeated. Hide your talent behind humor. I'm not hiding anything. No? She raised an eyebrow. Tell me, when was the last time you practiced seriously? Not for a video. Not to make people laugh. Just to get better. Tommy opened his mouth, then closed it. He genuinely couldn't remember. Months ago, longer, his practice time had become all about learning songs that would work for his videos. Stuff that sounded impressive but wasn't particularly challenging. Nothing that pushed him or scared him or made him grow. Your professors speak highly of your potential, Elena continued. I asked about you after. They say you're one of the most naturally gifted students they've seen in years. They also say you're lazy, that you coast, that you could be remarkable if you applied yourself. Each word stung because it was true. Tommy had heard versions of this speech from his professors before, but coming from Elena Volkov, it hit differently. Music isn't just about talent, she said. Talent is the beginning, not the end. What matters is what you do with it. Whether you're brave enough to be vulnerable, to work hard, to risk failure. I'm not afraid of failing, Tommy said, but it sounded weak even to his own ears. Elena smiled sadly. Yes, you are. That's why you hide behind jokes. If you never try seriously, you can never truly fail, but you also can never truly succeed. You stay safe, but you stay small. They sat in silence for a moment. Tommy could hear the maintenance crew in the lobby, their voices echoing. He felt like he was standing at a crossroads, and whatever he said next would matter. I don't know if I can be what you're talking about, he finally said. That kind of dedication, that level of seriousness. It's not really me, isn't it? Because what I saw today looked very much like the real you, the you that you're afraid to let people see. Elena reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. She held it out to him. Tommy took it, looking at the elegant script. It had her name, an email address, and a phone number with an Austrian country code. I run a summer intensive program in Vienna, she said. 8 weeks. We take only 12 students each year. It's difficult, demanding. You'll practice 6 hours a day minimum. You'll be pushed harder than you've ever been pushed. Most students say it's the hardest thing they've ever done. They also say it's the most transformative. Tommy stared at the card. Why are you offering this to me? After what I tried to do today? Because I see something in you that you don't see in yourself yet. Or maybe you see it, but you're scared of it. Either way, you have a choice to make. You can go back to your videos and your pranks and your safe little world where you never have to risk anything, or you can take a chance on becoming the musician you could be. I don't even know if I'd get accepted. There's no audition needed. I'm inviting you directly. The program starts in June. If you want it, it's yours. Tommy's hand was shaking slightly as he held the card. This was real. She was actually offering him this opportunity. This chance to study with one of the greatest pianists in the world. His YouTube channel had 50,000 subscribers and was growing. He had plans for new videos, for monetization, for turning it into a real career. This would mean putting all of that on hold for an entire summer. I need to think about it, he said. Elena stood up, adjusting her bag on her shoulder. Of course, you have until May to decide. But Tommy, let me tell you something I learned many years ago. The things we regret most in life are not the things we tried and failed at. They're the things we were too afraid to try at all. She started walking toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the nearly empty hall. Then she paused and turned back. One more thing. That video you recorded today, the one in your pocket, you should think carefully about what you do with it. You could post it as a prank and get your views and your laughs, or you could see it for what it really is. A moment when you stopped hiding and let yourself be real. When you stopped performing for others and started playing for yourself. Then she was gone, leaving Tommy alone in the dark recital hall with a business card in his hand and a decision weighing on his shoulders. He sat there for another 20 minutes, turning the card over and over in his fingers. Finally, he pulled out his phone. He had texts from Lisa asking about the footage, from other friends who'd been at the masterclass, from people who'd somehow already heard about what happened. He ignored all of them and opened his YouTube app. His latest video had gotten another 10,000 views since this morning. The comments were full of people asking when the next one would drop. His subscriber count had ticked up by another few hundred. This was what he'd worked for. This was success, wasn't it? But sitting there in that hall where he'd just experienced the most intense musical moment of his life, it felt hollow, empty, like eating candy when what you really needed was a real meal. Tommy stood up slowly and walked to the exit. The night air was cool when he stepped outside, clearing his head a little. He started the walk back to his apartment, Elena's card still clutched in his hand, her words echoing in his mind. He had a choice to make. Keep doing what was easy and safe, or take a risk on becoming something more. And for the first time in his life, Tommy genuinely didn't know which path he was going to choose. Tommy didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Dev's peaceful breathing from across the room. Elena's business card sat on his desk, illuminated by the streetlight coming through the window. He must have looked at it 100 times, reading the same information over and over like it might change or reveal some hidden answer. Around 3 a.m, he gave up on sleep and opened his laptop. The footage from the camera pen had already been transferred automatically to his computer. He pulled up the file and pressed play, watching the whole thing from start to finish. There he was, walking up to the piano with that fake nervous energy, starting to play badly on purpose, and then Elena sitting down next to him. The moment everything changed, he watched his own face in the video, saw the exact second when he dropped the act. His expression shifted from performed uncertainty to real concentration, then to something almost like joy. He'd never seen himself look like that before. In all his prank videos, his YouTube uploads, his social media posts, he'd never looked that alive. The video was good, really good. Not in the way his pranks were good with their perfect timing and funny reactions, but good in a deeper way. Real, raw, human. He could post it right now, title it, "Pranking a Famous Pianist Gone Wrong," and it would probably get millions of views. His subscriber count would explode. This could be the video that finally made him blow up. But every time his cursor hovered over the upload button, he couldn't click it. Something stopped him. Maybe it was Elena's words about what the video really represented. Maybe it was the fact that posting it felt like turning something sacred into content. Or maybe he was just tired of performing. The next few days were weird. Word had spread around school about what happened at the masterclass. People Tommy barely knew were stopping him in hallways, asking about it, wanting to hear the story. Some had already seen clips on social media. Other students who'd been there had posted their own videos, and they were going viral. Not as pranks, but as this beautiful, unexpected moment of musical connection. Tommy's phone was blowing up with notifications. His YouTube subscribers were tagging him in the videos other people had posted, asking when he was going to upload his version. His comment sections were full of people who'd heard about it and wanted to see his perspective. This was the kind of attention he'd always dreamed of, but it felt strange, uncomfortable even. Lisa came to find him in the practice rooms 3 days after the master class. She knocked on the door, and when he let her in, she had her phone in her hand. "So I posted my footage," she said, not quite meeting his eyes. "I hope that's okay. I wasn't sure what you wanted to do with yours, and people kept asking me about it, and I just thought the world should see it." It's at 2 million views already. Tommy should have been angry. They'd planned this together. The footage was supposed to be his content, his video, his moment. But when he opened his mouth, what came out was, "Can I see it?" Lisa pulled up the video and handed him her phone. She titled it simply, "Unexpected Piano Duet at Masterclass." No clickbait, no mention of a prank, just the music. The comments were overwhelming. People crying about how beautiful it was. Musicians analyzing the improvisation. Someone had even created a full transcription of what they'd played, turning their spontaneous creation into actual sheet music. "I'm sorry I didn't ask first," Lisa said. "But Tommy, you need to see what people are saying. They're not just entertained. They're moved. Really moved. That's different from your usual stuff, right?" She was right. His prank videos got laughs, got shares, got views. But these comments were different. People were talking about how the video made them want to pick up instruments they'd abandoned, how it reminded them why they fell in love with music in the first place, how they'd watched it 5, 10, 20 times just to feel that emotion again. "Are you going to post your version?" Lisa asked. "I don't think so," Tommy said, surprising himself with the answer. "I think maybe some things don't need to be content." Over the following weeks, Tommy started doing something he hadn't done in almost 2 years. He practiced. Really practiced. Not for videos, not for an audience, just for himself. He'd go to the practice rooms early in the morning before his classes and stay late into the night. His fingers hurt. His back ached from sitting at the piano for hours. But something inside him felt right for the first time in forever. Dev noticed the change immediately. "Dude, is that you playing or did someone else move into the practice room?" he joked one evening. But his eyes were serious, proud even. Tommy's professors noticed too. In his lessons, he started taking their feedback seriously instead of brushing it off. He worked on the technical exercises he'd always thought were boring. He tackled pieces that scared him, that pushed him beyond his comfort zone. It was hard. Some days he wanted to quit and go back to making easy videos and collecting easy likes, but he kept going. Elena's business card stayed on his desk. He'd pick it up sometimes, turn it over in his hands, think about Vienna. 8 weeks of intensive training. 8 weeks of being pushed harder than he'd ever been pushed. 8 weeks of choosing music over everything else. His YouTube channel sat neglected. He'd posted a simple message saying he was taking a break to focus on his studies. Some subscribers were supportive. Others unsubscribed, moved on to other content creators. His view counts dropped. His engagement numbers fell. Everything he'd built was slowly fading. And strangely, he was okay with it. In May, 2 weeks before the deadline Elena had given him, Tommy was in a practice room working through a particularly difficult Rachmaninoff piece. The same composer Elena had played at the masterclass. His phone buzzed. It was an email. "From Elena. I haven't heard from you," it read. "I assume that means you're still deciding. I want you to know that whatever choice you make, it should be yours alone. Don't do it for me or for your professors, or to prove something to anyone else. Do it because you want it. Because you're ready to choose yourself and your growth over comfort and safety. The offer stands until May 15th. After that, the spot goes to someone else." Tommy read the email 3 times. Then he closed his laptop and went back to the piano. He played the Rachmaninoff piece again, and this time something clicked. His fingers found the right feeling, the right emotion. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, real. He played for another hour, losing himself in the music. When he finally stopped, his decision was clear. It had probably been clear for weeks, but he'd been too scared to admit it. He was scared now too, terrified actually. But Elena was right. The things you regret most aren't the failures. They're the chances you never took. Tommy pulled out his phone and typed an email to Elena. Short and simple. "I'm in. Thank you for seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself. I'll be there in June." He hit send before he could second-guess himself. Then he sat back and took a deep breath. His YouTube channel would still be there if he wanted it later. His subscribers might come back or they might not. But this opportunity, this chance to really discover what he was capable of, wouldn't come again. 3 months later, Tommy was in Vienna, practicing 6 hours a day in a beautiful studio overlooking the city. It was the hardest thing he'd ever done. Some days he wanted to quit. Some days he felt like he wasn't good enough to be there. But he was growing in ways he'd never imagined possible. And sometimes, late at night when he couldn't sleep, he'd pull up Lisa's video of that duet with Elena. He'd watch it and remember the moment everything changed. The moment he stopped hiding behind jokes and let himself be vulnerable. The moment he chose to be real instead of safe. Years later, when people asked Tommy about his journey as a musician, he always came back to that day. The prank that became something more. The moment when he learned that the scariest thing isn't failing at something you care about. The scariest thing is never caring enough to try. And sometimes, he'd say with a smile, The best things in life happen when your plans fall apart and you're forced to show people who you really are.